Your goalkeeper really dictate if you do or don't win the Premier League? There are three types of goalkeeper. When it comes to titles in the Premier League, I'm looking back at who has won it historically, at least in the last 6, 7 years. Which type of keeper exactly can help you win the title? You would have heard of shot stoppers and sweeper keepers. And today we'll go through some data, talk about some recent examples, and in summary, come to a conclusion. Hi, I'm Wayne, and welcome to Goals by the Numbers. Let's just get straight into it. As the Premier League is still hasn't started yet for the next season, today will be another topical video to figure out what type of goalkeeper is likely or historically can help you win the Premier League. Any team that has ambitions of being the Premier League champions, essentially outside of being arguably lucky, like Leicester were a few years ago, will have to hit certain metrics to win. Scoring goals, getting points, etc. And in this episode, I want to decode the goalkeeper situation, which I think, which I have to admit, I think is one of the most misunderstood positions in the modern game. So, definitions. I think the first thing we should do is define the different styles of goalkeeper. So, firstly, we have shot stoppers. Their primary role is saving shots, essentially just doing their job. So you should think reflex saves, one-on-one duels, as in, someone's broken through the back line and it's just them and the goalkeeper, and positioning. So positioning themselves in a place where they can make angles of attack harder for players to score. Um, these keepers generally tend not to stray too far away from their goal line, but they tend to thrive under pressure. Our next category would be sweeper keepers. These are your modern day risk takers. They play a high line, they intercept passes, and in a lot of cases they appear to act as an 11th player. In some cases, they can even get assists. Quite impressive. And then our third category would be something between the two, the balanced goalkeepers. These would be your all-rounders, decent with their feet, reliable with their hands, not elite in one category, but consistent across the board in terms of their overall performance. So, having a look at the data, there are some metrics that we should know. PSxG, or post-shot expected goals, which in a similar fashion to XG, or expected goals, you know what? At this point, I realized that we probably should have a video where we talk about what some of these stats are to just go over them because they can always be referenced in future videos. But I digress. In a similar fashion to XG, PSxG measures the likelihood of a shot resulting in a goal. The other stat we should also take note of is OPA per 90. OPA per 90 measures the offensive actions for a goalkeeper, so you can expect to see a higher value for those as sweeper keepers and a lower value for those who are shot stoppers. OPA it's an interesting stat, in fact. I'll add a table that will show you which of the 5 leagues in Europe, the big 5 leagues, appears to have the most sweeper keepers looking at their OPA as a collective. Hopefully that makes sense. At this point, I think we should move on to real world examples. So, using last season for some of the goalkeepers, and then last season in the Premier League for the last two examples, well, let's discuss some of the numbers. So up first, David Raya, or David Raya. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. I'm not an Arsenal fan. He is your perfect sweeper keeper. 66 actions outside the penalty area last season. 17.2 meters in terms of positioning away from the goal line. Yet, he also led this group in save percentage with 74.2%. Maybe we could go on to describe his skills as a bit hybrid, because he tends to save more whilst being a very good seat sweeper keeper. And he also definitely passes the eye test. Our next goalkeeper would be Alisson of Liverpool. He actually falls into the balance category. When I watch Alisson play, he looks like a sweeper keeper to me. He moves like a sweeper keeper, but sometimes statistics can paint a different picture. With a strong PSxG of plus 3.5 and 1.76 OPA per 90, he's elite without having to be overly aggressive or forceful in his play. I imagine having such a stable goalkeeper would have been one of the reasons Liverpool would have won the title last season. Well, that and, of course, Mohamed Salah. Our third keeper, Ederson, another sweeper keeper, and just like Alisson from Brazil. He boasted 1.9 OPA and was 17.5 metres away from his goal line on average, the furthest of the entire group. His PSxG of plus 5 shows that he's not just sweeping, he's also saving a hell of a lot of shots too. So, our blast from the past. We have two goalkeepers. We have David Raya and we have Hugo Lloris. David Raya, often labelled as a shot stopper, and once I actually heard him labelled as the only man who could have saved the Titanic. Had the lowest OPA of the group, that being 0.84, but again, he is a shot stopper, so we would expect this value to be lower. His save percentage was 71.1. Watching him more than the other goalkeepers, I'm actually a bit surprised to hear it's this low. But again, statistics can paint interesting pictures and give us alternative perspectives. His save percentage of 71.1 still puts him in the ballpark for this group, but may hint at a potential decline in other areas of his game, which is why Manchester United ended up moving him on and getting in a new goalkeeper. The goalkeeper they chose, that being Andrea Onana, on a side note, if we go on a caveat, he was in Italy, Holland, or the Netherlands, and Spain. He was always a sweeper keeper. So you'd expect, at the time, Eric Ten Hag, the manager of Manchester United, brought him in, let David De Gea go. You would have thought that Andrea Onana would have been outside of his box, making passes, being involved in play. But when looking at his stats, he actually falls into the balance group. Not quite sure not quite sure what went wrong there. It happens. So the other goalkeeper, Hugo Lloris, formerly of Spurs, he was considered a top class keeper when he was in the Premier League playing. But in his last season in the Premier League, he had a PSxG of minus 4.1, the lowest of the group. But he remained a decent super keeper-ish, with an OPA of 1.18. So, that takes us on to the big question. When it comes to winning the Premier League, what type of goalkeeper do you need? In the last 5 seasons of the Premier League, including the last one, the champions have exclusively relied on balanced or super keepers. Manchester City have won it more times, so a super keeper would definitely be the best option. Ederson and Alisson have both lifted the Premier League, not just because of the systems that they play in for each of their respective clubs, but because of their goalkeeping profiles. They support high pressing, They also support aggressive defending from their team and transitional play. Shot stoppers, they may keep you in a match, but in modern day football and with the demands that it entails, will it help you win a Premier League? The last 5 seasons don't point to that being the case. So, our verdict. As we have concluded that sweeper keepers are more likely to help you win the Premier League than not, I guess, the best sweeper keepers are Arsenal, Manchester City, and Liverpool. So next season, aside of the fact that Liverpool won the title last season, Arsenal have come second 2 or 3 seasons on the bounce, and Manchester City were the previous champions. Outside of that fact, and the fact that they clearly have the strongest teams, their goalkeepers also hint at the fact that the champion next season is going to come from one of the 3 teams. So, like, comment, and if you want to subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Do you think a super keeper is the way forward? Do you like, I guess, the old-fashioned shot stopper? Or do you think a balanced keeper is the way to go forward, and the keeper could change depending on the game? Let me know your thoughts.